So what do you say to that? Thank you, Madison. Rambo followed
I
by
have
Wes.
a quick question for you, Gary.
Yeah.
What you just said. Do you think that part of the strategy, like you were saying, it is going to affect MAGA more than anybody else? But do you think he's prepping them to rile them up to the point of, a la January 6th, potentially?
I don't think there are enough of them to do that. I don't think the government will allow it to happen again. But I do believe he wants to, as we said earlier, mitigate whatever midterm losses by saying, aha, I told you in July, and look, you didn't pass the Save America Act. Those treasonous Republicans who refused to vote for it in the Senate, and look what we got as a result. Another stolen election by the Democrats. And by the way, I got to tell you, the Democrats are so good at stealing elections. I want them running the government because they're competent. You're telling me that the Republicans are incompetent because you can't steal the election, but the Democrats can. I mean, I know I'm saying this with a degree of facetiousness, but I think there's something to be said about that.
Guys, don't you think there's a normalized too, like with the troops on the streets and the like cast aspersions on the elections? Because I think what Madison is saying is interesting here. And whether or not it's as extreme as like get his people to January 6th, that stage again, but to refusing to seat House members or other things like this, like just make the abnormal normal, right? Keep troops on the streets. Keep saying that the elections aren't for real. Like legitimize and normalize is a great strategy if you're an authoritarian.
Or a wannabe authoritarian. I think we could all agree that he's a wannabe authoritarian. I'm not so convinced that he has devolved into such a person at this point, but I know that there are many people who will argue that he has. Look, Steve and I were discussing this earlier. I have a lot of friends who believe he screwed up this nation. It'll never be the republic that it was before, and so forth and so on. But in Hungary, Orban was very authoritarian, and now I don't know 100% the details of what's going on in Hungary, Steve, but it seems like it's gone back to its original roots of being a liberal democracy in Europe.
Well, they're moving in that direction. They're taking steps through legislation to return that. The thing to remember in Hungary is that even though I would think you're right, Orban was arguably a much stronger authoritarian in Hungary than Trump is here now. But when it wasn't a close election, when it was an overwhelming loss for Orban, he looked and said, I can't argue with that. I have nothing to back, and he walked away.
So what you're saying is that those who disagree with the policies of the president ought not to throw up their hands and walk away defeatist, but should make sure they get out and vote.
That's exactly right. Go out and vote. And if enough people agree with you, I mean, if it's an overwhelming, people are predicting. I mean, this is the part, I think, of what Trump was trying to blunt the effect, where even if a raw number of voters in this country want to vote out the Republicans, if you start working with gerrymandered districts and all that, you can blunt the effect of the raw numbers. But I think if the numbers are large enough, it won't matter.
Interesting. Yeah. So we discussed yesterday whether the intent would be to dissuade people from having faith in the electoral process. And perhaps, Steve, that was the intent of yesterday's speech.
Well, yes, I would just agree with you there. I think he was attempting to, what were you saying?
Erode confidence in the electoral process to the point where people don't even bother voting.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many people. It's like every little bit helps. I don't know if in mass numbers of people are just going to get full of despair and walk away and never vote and saying, "Oh, we've lost. It's all been lost." I think you get a few people here, you get a few people there, you know, on the mark, and you just keep clipping away at it. You just keep clipping away at it, and you know, pretty soon you're talking about some real numbers there. The voting record of Americans is still pretty sad. You know, even in years when there's high turnout, it's not really what it should be.
Well, if the voting record of Americans was better during the primaries, these democratic socialists that people were so concerned about would not be in office today.
Extremists on either party probably would not be. Also, gerrymandered districts. If you were living in a district where you had to represent more of a cross section of the population, you know, you couldn't just play to your base, and that extends into not only during the election but during your term in Congress. You know, gerrymandering. Both parties love it when they can do it. Okay, it's really a bad thing.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Madison. We'll go to Rambo, followed by Les.
Hey, good evening, guys. Yeah, I think, I had one, I had my thoughts together, but you guys have been touching base on so many other things since that point. So I'll say this. Absolutely, last night's, per the topic, was Trump's speech a nothing burger or ominous warning. I think the effort to undermine the midterm elections of 2026 began a while ago, right? Last year. And now, if we connect the dots and we look at everything from the raid, if we look at the rhetoric, if we look at all of the dots, it is part of a bigger agenda. And it's basically, when you think about it, right, because we know the facts don't align with the rhetoric. We know that this SAVE Act will do one thing. It will allow the government to compile a master database and extract information as it sees fit according to its political agenda. Data can be extracted. You can create phony cases, so on and so forth. And I think based on this administration so far, they are willing to do that. And a lot of it is going to be shared with the Department of Homeland Security in the efforts to do this deportation thing, right? So anyone who can't see that, any mature adult who can't see that this is part of a bigger picture, this is just merely a piece of a broader puzzle. Now, what we will see the deployment of this agenda push. We'll see it via social media. We'll see it via podcast. We'll see it by interviews on the slate of morning talk shows, and all our effort will be made. And it reminds me of a January 6th 2.0. This is a new iteration of it. And someone alluded to before, I believe, the host of this room, that no matter which way we go, if you lose, it's like, see, we told you guys, and then, it's going to, the chaos that they have laid out will result in physical confrontations. I think when the polls are open in November, I suspect the deployment of ICE at various places. So I think it's going to get, it's going to get rough for America. And we're going to have to come to terms with the reality of this debacle. Those are my thoughts based on the conversation. Alain.
And Trump is now preparing to allow us to get guns online. We won't have to go to gun stores anymore.
Okay, we go one at a time here. Hang on there, Billy. So Madison,
thank you for allowing me to speak, Gary.
I'm sorry, Rambo. I apologize. We were talking to Madison a minute ago, and I forgot that we were talking to Rambo. I apologize. Rambo, as Steve mentioned in the very beginning, and I know it was a long time ago, and a lot of people here might not have been here during that time. His concern is if you put ICE officers at the polling places, it may dissuade people from voting.
Even American citizens.
Well, obviously they'd have to be American citizens to vote.
Right.
Right, but they don't want to be stopped. They don't want to be interrogated. They don't want to have to be detained. And, you know, I mean, you could do that. I mean, they do that. They detain people and then they sort it out later. Oh, you're an American citizen. Okay, we're going to let you go. Yeah, you know, which is kind of ridiculous because if they go in and they're allowed to vote, then you got to presume they're an American citizen. If they're turned away, maybe that's a different story.
Well, the administration's been claiming that there are non-citizens voting.
Right, but there's nothing to show that it's federal.
That's right.
It's federal evidence. So, anyway, thank you for that, Rambo. Let's hang on 1 second. Alan, did you want to jump in? I know you're late to the party today.
No, Gary, I'm listening and enjoying all the information you put out.
Thank you, Alan. Go light up a stogie for me, would you? Les, followed by Marcus.
So, in terms of the 2020 election, it's been 5 years that there have been court cases. And just, you know, so many cases, I think there were 60 that were, you know, that Mr. Trump endorsed. And it was, you know, and the effort was supported by billionaires, so they had access to the best lawyers that money could buy. At some point, you know, you don't have to believe anything that people can't, you know, prove. And I really am against this idea that, for example, Gary, your colleague, that said it was your job to, he made a claim and it said it was your job to look it up on the internet. No, you make the claim. If that gentleman made that claim, it's his job to prove it. Otherwise, my default position is to ignore it. Not to think he's a liar, but just ignore it, he ever said it. Until, and if he produces the evidence, I'll turn it around. But after 5 years, in this case, or 15 years, in the case of the birther stuff, you know, you can be pretty sure that, you know, it's just bullshit.
Well, I don't know whether it's bullshit or not. He made this, and I want to know to what he was referring. That's all. I want to look crap, prove it. I didn't say that to him. I said, wait a minute. You said that, what about all the dead people who have been voting? And I said, what dead people have been voting? And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean you haven't heard about that? And I said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, well, I'm not going to give you the names of every dead person. You know, it's just mind-boggling that you cannot even have a conversation sometimes with people when you're not arguing with them, but they view it as an argument and they get defensive. And, you know, based on his reaction to my inquiry, you're right, it probably was bullshit. Because if he really had anything, he would have said, well, you know, I don't have all this, but I read about it, and back in, they showed that, you know, 20% of people who voted in such and such, you know, he had nothing. If you really believe it, you should have something and not say, well, you look it up. I mean, it's ridiculous. You're making the comment, as you point out, you have to back it up with something. Not me. I'm not the one who interjected it in the conversation. He did.
And Gary, you're just
absolutely right.
Say, for the time being, I don't, you know, I have no reason to believe this, but you can easily change my mind by producing evidence. And
if you make an argument to me, Les, you know, if you make an argument to me, Les, and I'm interested in what you're saying, I'm going to say to you, Les, we've done this when you brought up issues about health concerns. And I said, well, wait a minute, I haven't heard about that. Then where are you getting this from? And you don't say to me, you look at that, Gary. You always come back and you say, well, you know, such and such happened in such and such U.S. possession when a certain individual went there and told them not to get vaccinated, and a bunch of them died. You backed it up. And that's what you're supposed to do.
84,
Yes.
84
Yes.
non-vaccinated. But yeah, that's exactly the right attitude. It's a polite thing to do to assume that the guy that made the claim has evidence to back it up. And what you're doing is just exactly right. And if I happen to be wrong, I would be the first one that would like to know about it before I repeat it again. So,
Me too. I'm the same way as you all know. I want to know if I'm wrong. I want to be corrected. I don't get upset if somebody can correct me. I want to know because I don't want to give disinformation because I lose my credibility if I do. I mean, that's all I have in life is my credibility. Byro's wondering whether I even have that. Thanks a lot, Byro. Okay, Les, thank you. We'll go to Marcus and then say probably adieu for the week. Marcus.
Yes, hello. So, I thought it was very boring, the speech, and also what's on the website of the White House was a nothing burger. But you could also call it a shit burger. The thing is, Bill Maher, there are few realities in my mind. One is what Bill Maher said to Cheney Vance. When you guys win an election, it's all great. When you lose one, it's all fake and rigged. That shit has to stop, Bill Maher. The first reality. The second reality is that in the United States, we do have a complex and for most people not transparent voting system based on the federal based on the state, like having all of these different rules. So would it need some sort of a consolidation, some sort of a better logistics? I would say yes. But, we live in that shitburger environment. So the guys who are being appointed for CIA director are unable to say who won the election. And on the other side, as Cuomo pointed out in his show 2 days ago, professors from renowned universities are unable to say that a human being with a uterus is a woman. So that's where we are, and I can tell you it's going to get worse. So good luck, buckle up, and do something to increase trust.
So I'm so glad because Steve and I had a bite to eat before the show at a great place in Belmar, New Jersey. If you should ever be here, it's called Jack's by the Tracks. This is a great town, and I recommend visiting it when you're in the New York, Philadelphia area. But they're not paying me to say that. I'm just saying it. But I'm so glad that I had the turkey club and not the burger after that description of burgers. Steve Byro, journalist extraordinaire, thank you for joining me today. Did you have fun? I did.
Had fun. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And your list of commentators, regular listeners and all, very thoughtful people.
Yeah, he's been
Thanks for
listening in
coming,
lately.
Steve.
There you go from Alan. So, and we're going to try to buttonhole him to do this more often. I thought it was fun. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 o'clock New York time, so till 5 o'clock New York time on Monday for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, have a great weekend. Don't go out if you're in the area of the smoke unless you absolutely have to. People actually die from breathing in this shit. And that's real shit. Until then, peace out.
these things from the outside. Hard to do it tastefully without being somewhat academic.
So again, this idea that someone could do that to him and shows that, hey, outside Iran, he's actually, and no, the FBI won't release